Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
We are abandoning our Constitution, and the federal government is destroying our Constitution pragmatically because they just don't think they have to follow the law. That's what I'm amazed by the press, is they don't watch the politicians in Washington, D.C. who violate it every day, including Joe Biden and his administration. They violate the Constitution every day, and then they come back and say they want to save the Constitution and save liberty, which is an absolute joke. So one question I have for every person in the country,
yes,
especially the press. Sheriff Cronister in Florida, in Tampa, arrested Pastor Rodney Howard Brown for having church service a couple of years ago. Sheriff Hamilton in New Mexico defended Pastor Caleb Cooper in keeping his church open against the state trying to shut them down because of COVID, and said that they weren't essential, so they had to shut down. Let me tell you folks right now, which type of sheriff do you want in your county and in your community? The one that defends the First Amendment, or the one that trashes it and walks all over it and arrests a pastor for having church? This is exactly what we are at the CSPOA. We're trying to make sure that our sheriffs stand for liberty and stand for the Constitution, no matter what else is going on. We stand for liberty, we stand for civil rights, and we promote the cause, the holy cause of liberty, no matter what the other pressures are politically to do the opposite.
Our job is to defend liberty. Welcome back to Truth Thursday, and the Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, as you just heard, sheriffs are the local line of the defense of liberty and life and property. If you understand the Constitution and their role in protecting citizens using that Constitution, we've seen sheriffs stand up, as Sheriff Mack just mentioned, to protect our First Amendment rights during the pandemic when churches were closed indiscriminately and people were arrested for worshiping in public. Sheriffs can also be a key defender of our right to keep and bear arms if the office is functioning correctly, and can be a bulwark against election fraud and help ensure election integrity. Well, the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association website states that the oath sworn by the sheriff when constitutionally elected to office is significant in the fact that he or she is the first line of defense in preserving the constitutional rights of the citizen. When we look at the office of sheriff, combined with the historical powers held by that office, he or she stands as the upholder, defender, protector, and servant to the liberties of the people within the county that they serve. In addition to upholding the law, the sheriff's charged with upholding the supreme law of the land, the Constitution of the United States. The law enforcement powers held by a sheriff supersede those of any agent, officer, elected official, or employee from any level of government when in the jurisdiction of the county. Furthermore, it is this responsibility that grants a sheriff the constitutional authority to check and balance all levels of government within the jurisdiction of the county. Well, former Arizona Sheriff Richard Mack founded that organization and still leads it today. Sheriff Mack, sir, we're honored to have you on the Rob Maness Show. Welcome.
Well, Colonel, it's a pleasure to be with you. It's absolutely an honor to get to know you, and thank you so much for having me.
Well, yeah, I just think it's so very important for the average citizen to understand what is the tools that they have available to defend themselves from this absolute insane legal environment that we face today. And I'm not even being hyperbolic, Sheriff Mack. One of the questions I've been wanting to ask you, because I first learned about your organization several years ago, is why did you see a need to establish this association in the first place?
I could say that in just a very succinct sentence: because of all the abuse and corruption of the United States government. But there's a bigger story to it behind that. But it is our effort to do what Madison warned us to do, and that is that the states are responsible to erect the barriers against the encroachments of the national authority. And so that is exactly what we were doing. And when I was sheriff in Arizona back in the 90s, man, I haven't been sheriff for about 26, 27 years, and it just seems like it was yesterday. But the 8 years I was sheriff, I became the first sheriff in American history to launch a major lawsuit against the federal government, which at that time was the Clinton administration. So miraculously, I sued the Clintons, won a case against them at the United States Supreme Court, and I lived to tell about it. So all of that's quite miraculous. And it was against the Brady Bill, and the Brady Bill was the first time in American history where Congress and the White House promulgated legislation that commandeered the office of sheriff for federal bidding. And in other words, they wanted to take the sheriffs away from their counties and have them responsible to the federal government and enforce any legislation or act or bill that they capriciously just order us to do. So now all of a sudden we're supposed to be servants, slaves to the federal government. And when the BATF sent 3 agents of the federal government to our Sheriff's Association meeting in Phoenix, Arizona on January 21st, 1994, they gave us a document 25 pages long that detailed our marching orders to now follow and obey the federal government and do whatever they tell us. And I told the other sheriffs that I wasn't going to do it. All of them acquiesced, and they were good people. They were good men. But they acquiesced for some reason. And my wife totally supported me in this, and she made the final decision that that is exactly what we would do. We would sue our own government. And the CSPOA was born out of that amazing, miraculous lawsuit.
That is amazing that you were the only one that stood up for the Constitution, because that's a direct violation of the separation of powers between the central government and the state and local government. That's talked about in several places.
Add, historically, 6 other sheriffs, several weeks later, 6 other sheriffs joined me in that lawsuit. But I was so grateful that they did, because I didn't want to be by myself, and it had a huge impact on it, making the Supreme Court. So I was always grateful for that. I was alone for a while, but basically when you only have 7 sheriffs out of 3,086, you're still pretty much alone.
But at least you had somebody standing next to you.
God.
So
yes, thank God.
So that bill, the Brady bill, I think most people recognize the name nowadays when you hear about it, but that was an anti-Second Amendment bill, wasn't it?
Yeah, it totally was. It was promulgated by Handgun Control Incorporated. And then Sarah Brady and her organizations exploited her husband, James Brady, who was the press secretary for Ronald Reagan when Reagan was shot in March of '81. And James Brady took a bullet to the head, and he was confined to a wheelchair the rest of his life. He was still very smart and very with it. And it caused his early death, but he was there when Sheriff Prince from Montana and I ended up at the Supreme Court on this case in December of 1996. James Brady was there. I went and talked with him. I shook his hand, and he said he really admired me for what I had done. And I told him I really admired him. He was very congenial and gracious, and I've always had a positive opinion of him. Not so much with his wife.
I'm not surprised by that. Nor should it be. nor should it
No,
be, because
no.
anybody that attacks our civil liberties and the Second Amendment right is as core a civil liberty of the United States citizen as any of the rest of them, if not more so, as the kind of
Exactly.
shield, the five rights
Yeah.
and the First Amendment, especially. But so the reason I like your organization is that you guys do training and those kind of things, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity to inform me and the audience here. How can we, there aren't very many sheriffs, I think, still today that are considered constitutional sheriffs. I'm not sure of the numbers. You're probably tracking it and everything. But of those that aren't, what can the citizen, the voter that lives in those counties, how can we help them to become constitutional sheriffs?
Well, that's a great question, and thank you. And it is exactly what our goal is, and it's what we're about. Our association is about training citizens to be involved in this process. We cannot, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot take our country back. We cannot take our liberty back. We cannot restore our constitutional republic as she was meant to be without the American people being involved. We, the people, the first three words of our Constitution, must be educated, must be active. What did Jefferson warn us about? The price of liberty is eternal vigilance. And I'm sorry, but we've all gone to sleep, and now it's time to wake up and restore our country. And so first, I want everybody to get a copy of that. And this is a highlighted version of my Supreme Court case that I worked on for weeks to find all the most important parts of the case. Again, authored by Justice Scalia, and it's very small. It fits in your little shirt pocket. It's only 16 pages. You can read it in 10 minutes, but I really want you to study it. And then I want you to give copies to your sheriff and other local officials. They need to know about this case. Most of you don't know about this case. You need to keep this with you, keep it in your home, show it to your family and kids and friends, and get enough to where you can give it to local officials. Hand it to your sheriff and ask him if he's familiar with the only time in U.S. history where sheriffs sued the federal government to protect the Constitution and to protect the office of sheriff nationwide. And so we train you, and we want you to join our posse, cspoa.org, become a member of the CSPOA posse so that we can train you and help you work with your sheriff to organize a posse in your county. And then you can work with him to make sure that he is ready and has a Minuteman organization ready to help him keep the peace or whatever else he wants to do. It's totally up to him how he runs and utilizes his posse in your county. But that will also help you find out if he is indeed a constitutional sheriff, and you need to make sure that he is. But no sheriff can defend the rights of the people if he doesn't know what the rights of the people are. And he needs to become a specialist in the Constitution. He must know and understand the Bill of Rights. There's about 28 principles of freedom guaranteed in the Bill of Rights. And do we all know the intent of the founders in promulgating the Bill of Rights? And it wasn't in the original Constitution. It came later because they said, we made a mistake. We forgot to list a Declaration of Rights. And that is, the intent is to show government specific rights that they can never violate, change, alter, or infringe. And so this intent of the Bill of Rights is huge, because the Second Amendment is in there for one reason, and that is to make sure that government is protecting our right to keep and bear arms, and that they can never infringe that right. And folks, now we have 20,000 gun control laws, mostly by the federal government, and I want to know what you and your sheriff are going to do to make sure that those don't get enforced, those laws do not get enforced, and there's going to be no more federal attempts to confiscate guns from the American people and law-abiding citizens in your county. And that's your sheriff's job.
And we got to take a break, Sheriff Mack. When we come back, though, we're going to talk about exactly that because we have a clip from yesterday's testimony by the FBI director, and it looks like an opening salvo on the next attack from a federal agency on the Second Amendment. We'll be right back with Sheriff Richard Mack of the CSPOA on the Rob Maness Show live here on Truth Thursday on Worldview Tube and X Spaces simulcast.
The shooter took the gun up with him when he climbed up to the top of the roof, or was it already placed there somewhere?
So that is something that we're drilling into right now that we don't know the answer to yet. I can tell you, which may be relevant though to your question, that, and I don't think this has been reported yet, that the weapon had a collapsible stock, which could explain why it might have been less easy for people to observe, because one of the things that we're finding is people have observed him, the first people to observe him with the weapon were when he was already on the roof, and we haven't yet found anybody with firsthand observation of him with the weapon walking around beforehand. So that doesn't mean he wasn't, obviously, but the collapsible stock is potentially a very significant feature that might be relevant to that.
Did he have a scope?
I believe so, but as I sit here right now, I don't remember.
Okay.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. And my guest today is Sheriff Richard Mack of the Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officers Association that he founded. Sheriff Mack, the little clip there gave me a reminder about something called bump stock and the banning of the bump stock, which was later overturned. And President Trump signed that executive order, but it was later overturned by the Supreme Court, as it should have been. No matter what you feel about that kind of stuff at all, it was an infringement that should never have occurred on the Second Amendment. And Ray there, that was just yesterday. Instead of saying, we're looking into the fact that nobody saw him on the ground and we think he may have stashed the weapon beforehand or somebody else had placed the weapon so he wasn't walking around with it, which is the logical place to go. He focuses on a 2-inch movement of a piece of plastic on the butt end, at the butt end of a rifle. It's 2 inches. Go measure. There's a guy put a video out that showed him on Twitter. You guys should share that. Make sure you tag Christopher Wray and the FBI in that. It's ridiculous. Instead of focusing on how the guy got up on the roof and was not seen with the rifle, they focus on a small plastic part that really has no bearing on whether he was seen with that rifle or not. What?
Yeah, Ray is making it sound like that helps him really conceal it. That would still be about 2 feet long, with or without the bump stock or the collapsible stock. So I don't get it. What I really don't get is why they trust Ray and the FBI to do this investigation in the first place. Nobody in this country trusts the FBI anymore. They've been used as a political hit squad. They have been militarized. They have committed acts of election fraud, especially during the Russian hoax. They've gone after Donald Trump. Way back in the 50s and 60s, they used to follow Martin Luther King around, and they illegally monitored and wiretapped Martin Luther King. And And Martin Luther King was arrested over 30 times. I don't believe the FBI ever arrested him, but local police and sheriffs did, and he never committed a crime. Rosa Parks was arrested for not giving her seat to a white man, yet there was no law against doing so. Kind of like the COVID-19 mandates. There was no law, but some stupid sheriffs and stupid law enforcement found, we can charge him with disorderly conduct. That is actually what Rosa Parks was charged with. We also have the federal government going after Amish farmers and Amish people for merely exercising their religious beliefs and how they run their farm, and that they do not wish to pasteurize their milk or other dairy products. And so the federal government comes in and destroys their farm, destroys their products. Amos Miller right now is having his entire farm destroyed by the government. Pennsylvania government's now going up, picked up from where the USDA left off. And this kind of tyranny and this kind of abuse and violating the purpose of what government was established to do, and that was to protect people's rights. My right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness is supposed to be guaranteed by the federal government. And instead, we have these bureaucracies like the IRS, FBI, USDA, FDA, EPA, and so on, that continuously violate the rights of the people. And Congress is allowing this to continue. And Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, have never reined in the IRS or really the FBI either. And this needs to stop. And I think the only way that we have now left to protect people from the onslaught of bureaucratic criminality is state by state. The only peaceful and effective solution we have left is the constitutional sheriff working with his people, his posse, and making sure that these safety protocols are established to protect the American people, county by county and state by state. I think that's the only thing we have left. And Ray, why is it, Colonel, that federal directors of whatever bureaucracy we're talking about, Secret Service, now FBI, they can't remember much? They're going through this most important investigation that they've had in decades, and they can't remember things. And so I don't trust Ray. I don't trust the FBI. Even the good people, quote, good people that work for the FBI, 99% of them just follow orders. And I'm sorry, that's wrong and that's evil.
That's the problem. That's why I've had some of the FBI whistleblowers like Kyle Seraphin and Steve Friend on the show several times, because they call them the good Germans. Nazi Germany only was able to rise to power and exist because of people that went along, and most of the people in that country went along in the civilian population. Look what the disaster that happened. So, question for you from an investigatory perspective. You understand law enforcement and the legal lines associated with the different agencies more than most, Sheriff Mack. And who could we trust that should be doing this investigation on the assassination attempt of Donald Trump?
Well, one of the congressmen, and I don't know if it was Andy Biggs. He's actually my congressman from Arizona. And I don't know if it was him or somebody else while they were interviewing Cheadle or interrogating Cheadle. Boy, she was great. She sure held to the talking points. I don't have that information in front of me, but there's been other directors that have had to quit because of all these scandals. And the only thing that changes is the name on the door. They don't change anything else, folks. It's not going to do anything for her to quit because they will not hold their feet to the fire. And we, the people, have got to take over that. And all these federal agencies need to be abolished. I'm sorry, but they need to be abolished. We need to start over on any of those that actually have constitutional authority to exist. But so they called. One of the congressmen called for an independent investigation, and right there, I would say, let's get some former sheriffs, and let's maybe get some current sheriffs, and let's get people that are really accountable to the people in that area, especially,
and let's have at least a parallel investigation. But the FBI has already gone up there and has washed the roof. They've sprayed it down with a water hose. They've allowed visitors to climb up on that roof, to walk around and trample out the crime scene. So the crime scene's already been completely violated, and the integrity of the crime scene is gone. And so why in the world would they do that? Is it because they have a history of doing that? At Waco, at the Branch Davidian compound, the FBI hurried up and got rid of all the evidence. At 9/11, the FBI hurried up and got rid of all the evidence. And they even said a reason. It's because they're trying to bring closure to these horrible incidents. That's not the FBI's job. In fact, I'm wondering if they know what their job is. So anyway,
Closure comes
true to form.
when the public finds out the truth. Closure only comes when the public finds out the truth. And we do have a live audience, and I've got a hand up over there. So we'll go over to our Spaces host, who's Shell, and take that question for you, Sheriff Mack. Go ahead, Shell.
Yes, sir. We have a question from the audience, sir. And he is asking, I had it right here, I swear to goodness. He's asking, are the 20,000 federal gun laws passed by Congress, or are the Chevron deference by ATF? Could someone please ask the sheriff?
Okay, I think the question is, we have laws that are passed by Congress, but a number of them have probably been passed by the ATF or other agencies under Chevron deference, which was just overturned. I think that's the question, Sheriff Mack.
Well, some of the 20,000 laws that exist also have been passed by some of the several states. So the total is actually over 20,000. Most of them have come from the federal government. But then I like your question. A part of it is some of the bureaucracies, like the BATF, actually change policies and treat them as if they're laws. And see, that's the fault of Congress, allowing any of that. And so these federal bureaucracies become powers unto themselves. The worst one, the IRS, that has bullied Americans for years. And so I'm glad that the United States Supreme Court came out with their Chevron ruling, but really, I don't think it's going to change the gun control fanatics and extremists in Washington, D.C., like Commie Kamala, and they're going to be coming after them. The question is, do we have sheriffs that are ready to stop this gun control movement and this addiction and fanaticism that these people have? Because the federal government has only one skin in the game regarding the Second Amendment, and that is to guarantee it. Otherwise, they have no other business being involved. And let's make this very clear. The intent of the founders and the intent of the Second Amendment, it makes gun control against the law in the United States of America. The gun control is against the law, period.
Yeah, we've seen some sheriffs in the last few years actually say, I mean, I think one of them was even in Illinois, of all the blue places that you could be, that said, hey, I'm not going to enforce an unconstitutional gun law.
We're not going to enforce it. And then Pittsburgh, the mayor, the governor in Illinois said, well, I'm going to suspend them. And he didn't, he's not in charge of the sheriffs. They don't work for him. They work for the people in each county.
Exactly right. So every gun law that infringes on your right to keep and bear arms and to be able to use it
against the law
is constitutional and against the law.
Correct.
It could be invalidated by the local sheriff. And the local sheriff, just to make sure I understand, sir, is the only elected official that has that power, isn't it?
He does. And the reason he has that power is he gets it directly from we the people. The people in his county and the people in this entire country delegate all power and authority to our representatives in government at every level. Doesn't matter which one. But the sheriff is the only elected, appointed sheriff or law enforcement authority anywhere in the country and he answers only to the people, and they are elected by, for, and of the people, and they review his job every 4 years to see if they're going to keep him. And that's what this is all about.
Exactly right. Well, we got to take another commercial break, Sheriff Mack. But when we come back, I know I've seen some of your thoughts on the sheriff's role in election integrity. So I want to get you to lay that out there for the audience to hear, because obviously it's top of mind right now. I'm still worried about what happened in 2022 and concerned about what's happening right this moment as we approach 2024, when we really critically need to get Donald Trump reelected. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show on Worldview Tube and X Basis Simulcast with Sheriff Richard Mack.
And this is the duplication room. I observed with my Democratic partner the preparation of a new ballot, since the original one was soiled or wouldn't go through the tabulators. I read her a Trump Republican ballot, and as soon as she entered it into the system, the ballot defaulted on the screen to a Biden Democratic ballot. We reported this to the supervisors, and others in the room commented that they had witnessed the same manipulation. We were never told what, if any, corrective action was taken. All I know is the next day I was called outside the room that I was working in signature verification by the supervisor saying, "I understand you caused some problems this week," and saying that you thought our machines were not working correctly. And I was being the one that was scolded. And I was told at that point in time I could not discuss anything or talk about what was going on, as many people were threatened, because they were told that their voices would be suppressed. They would be either have to leave the room and not work there again. I'm here because I think this is our duty to speak the truth.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're live on Truth Thursday at Worldview Tube and X Basis Simulcast. And my guest today is the president and founder of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, former Arizona Sheriff Richard Mack. And Sheriff Mack, that testimony that you just saw there from a election worker is from Arizona. You could see Senator Wendy Rogers off to her right in the room, and that is not 2 years old. That's recent. Yes. We still have issues, and I've heard some things that you've talked about this, but one of my big questions that I really don't know the answer to is, shouldn't sheriffs be the ones investigating these election fraud accusations and disparities that have occurred in these elections since 2020 that have been so readily identified, documented in affidavits, by evidence, and those kind of things? Yes. I think there's one in Michigan maybe that's doing an investigation, but I don't know of any others that are conducting an investigation. Shouldn't they be, as the elected constitutional law enforcement official in the county?
Well, you would sure think so, Colonel. And we have said that, and we actually had 2 years ago, we held, it was a conference inside a conference, and the conference was the Freedom Fest. I believe that's what his name was. And they asked me to be a speaker there. And we got about 20 sheriffs from across the country that were there. And then we had a conference room, and it was packed, standing room only. And we had Catherine Engelbrecht from True the Vote there. And so we had a presentation to the sheriffs, and some of these sheriffs had actually conducted investigations. Sheriff Darleaf in Michigan has been doing this for 3 years now, maybe over 3 years. He's right now in the middle of a re-election bid. This will be his 5th term. We pray that he gets back in. They have tried to shut him down. They have tried to arrest him. They have tried to indict him. And the only thing he's doing is checking in to the voting system of his county. He has done nothing else wrong. And they continue to get in his way and try to stop him. The Secretary of State in Michigan refused to cooperate with him. He asked for some evidence. Oh, no, they won't turn that over. They're doing anything and everything to prove they have something to hide. Sheriff Calvin Hayden, right outside Kansas City, I think it's Johnson County. He's been conducting an investigation for a couple of years. The Secretary of State, he told the Secretary of State, I need to see those ballots. You know what the Secretary of State did? Got rid of them. Shredded them. And there's no video evidence as to what actually the Secretary of State did, but the Secretary of State committed a crime because the sheriff was actually conducting a lawful investigation to determine if there was cheating in the state of Kansas. And of course, they hurriedly got rid of the ballots. And so we actually have some others there now working to try to get the Attorney General to defend Sheriff Hayden. And Sheriff Hayden is in the middle of a very big re-election bid. So it depends on if Sheriff Darleaf gets cheated because of election fraud, and maybe Sheriff Hayden's going to be a victim of election fraud. We don't know. No one does. What these computers do in cyberspace. It's very difficult to investigate crimes committed in cyberspace, and that they get programmed prior and then programmed a different way during the actual voting and tabulation, and then go back to the original program that's inside that computer. For people to believe that computers cannot be programmed to do that, you're stupid, you're naive, or you're lying about this. Those computers can be hacked, and hacked easily. Some of the most sophisticated computers in the world, with major multi-billion-dollar companies, including the Pentagon, have been hacked by 16, 15-year-old computer specialists. Come on, folks. Anybody that thinks that these computers can't be hacked, you're part of the problem. And so now we have a sheriff in San Juan County, California, conducted an investigation, and he arrested a city councilman who harvested ballots. 75 different people were registered at his home address as voting in San Juan County in a city election. That man has been arrested. Yuma County, Arizona, Sheriff Wilma arrested 2 people, high-ranking Democrats, for election fraud. Sheriff Schmeling in Wisconsin, in Racine County, conducted an investigation because they received complaints from people in nursing homes throughout their county. And they found 6 public officials that had actually organized trying to get people to vote. Well, actually getting people to vote, people actually voted who were not physically capable of voting. They were invalids. And family members of these people said, we got notice that our mother voted. She's not capable of voting. She's in this nursing home because she's invalid. And so then they conducted the investigation. Sheriff Schmeling turned it over to the Attorney General of the state, a Democrat, staunch Democrat. And he said, the AG said this: nice publicity stunt, Sheriff. We're not doing anything on this. And so it's that kind of, but your main point, Colonel, is there should have been thousands of sheriffs investigating election fraud to make sure that there was no election fraud in their counties. We even had a couple of sheriffs in Arizona complaining about election fraud who still did not do investigations. And so we really need to promote this, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're asking every sheriff in the country, we're asking 1,000 sheriffs to come to a conference that we're having on September 7th. And folks, we need funding for that conference. If you want us to really do something about election fraud in 2024, we need your donations so that we can have this conference and get sheriffs more involved and have them prepared and trained to stop the election fraud of 2024.
Yeah, so you think some of this is a training issue. Well, we've got another hand up, Sheriff Mack, over the audience. Let's go ahead and take that question from our host, Shell. Go ahead, Shell.
Yes, sir. A gentleman asks that okay. According to Executive Order 14074, Advancing Effective Accountable Policing, etc., why do we never see any body cam footage from federal LEOs in shootings? Have they ignored the guidance, sir?
That's a great question. You know, the getting body cam.
You might need to give me that
places.
again. I couldn't quite hear it all, Colonel. Give me the question again.
Why do we not get body cam footage from federal law enforcement around these major incidents, or any incident for that matter? That seems to be they're ignoring the law. I think the biggest example is January 6th. Even the defendants are having trouble, continue to have trouble getting body cam footage from certain federal agencies.
Well, that's another example why we don't trust the federal government and we don't trust the FBI, because the FBI arrested over 1,000 people nationwide. Not one time did the FBI follow the law and put those people through the extradition process, which is their guaranteed constitutional right. Again, we have the FBI just doing whatever they want. They could be as lawless as they possibly want to be to pursue an agenda, not the truth, and not investigate crime and see who the innocent people are as well as decipher who the guilty people are. They're just pursuing an agenda that was promulgated or promoted by the Democrat Party. And so there's been plenty of video evidence that the FBI investigation and congressional investigation has completely ignored. And even Senator Mitt Romney, who I have nothing but disdain for, actually came out and said, we've already seen enough evidence as to what happened at January 6th. We don't need to see any more evidence. How stupid is that? People are in prison for crazy sentences, even more than what people get for murder most of the time in this country. And they're in prison. And Romney wants us to ignore any further evidence so that these people could be exonerated. This is the kind of stupidity and corruption we're dealing with.
It is, and that's the kind of political comment that used to come out of politicians in the Soviet Union and other authoritarian governments. Well, we don't need to see any more evidence. We've seen enough. They're guilty, and we're gonna sentence them to as many years as we like, even though people on the other political side, we're not going to do anything to you all except for minimal, part of the process. I mean, there may be one or two that have gone to prison for some things on the other side, I think there was a guy out in Oregon that attacked the federal courthouse there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking over you. I'm sorry. But
hey, go ahead.
To answer the question, the video evidence is subpoenable, and if they don't provide it, then the accused should walk.
Yeah. Well, we got to take our last break, Sheriff Mack. And when we come back, we'll hear from President Trump about January 6th and those prisoners, and we can continue this discussion because I'm very interested in this extradition issue that you just raised. I've got some more questions about that. So we'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show live here on Truth Thursday with Sheriff Richard Mack.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Melissa and I have been taking Bella Grace, this powerful elixir, since last fall, 2023. The results have been amazing. My hands would crack and bleed, deep cuts and cracks every winter for years. No matter what we did, we couldn't get them to stop cracking and bleeding. This year, I took Bella Grace, no cracking, no bleeding. My acid reflux, gone. Haven't had to take a Pepsid. My hair growth, the last 2 times I had my hair cut, the lady had to use thinning shears on my hair. That's amazing. We've also received incredible feedback from you, our listening audience, and the impact it's had for you. This is loaded with astaxanthin. That's a powerful antioxidant. Collagen, but top grade collagen. Studies show 95% of it is being absorbed in the body because of the way they develop it. Then we have something called cat's claw. That's an anti-inflammatory from a vine in Peru. It's the bark, and it's an anti-inflammatory. There are about 80 clinical trials on Bella Grace. Please get a subscription now and save. MelissaHouseBG.com.
But just this happened a few hours ago. The Supreme Court ruled that Biden's Department of Justice has wrongly prosecuted hundreds of Americans for peacefully protesting on January 6th. Those people have been treated so badly, especially when you compare them with people that ripped apart and killed people in Portland and in Seattle and in other places. They have been treated so badly. So we're asking, based on the decision, they should immediately be released, immediately, the J6 hostages.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday here on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast live. And our guest is Sheriff Richard Mack, former Arizona sheriff that founded and is currently president of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. And Sheriff Mack, we were talking about sheriffs should be having a role in these thousands of arrests across the nation by federal law enforcement. I've never seen anything like this, where basically federal law enforcement is sent out from the centralized district where the federal government lives and sends their minions out to drag American citizens that were exercising 3 at least of the 5 rights in the First Amendment: speech, assembly, and demanding redress of grievances in person in the Capitol, yes. Dragging them back to the District of Columbia in most cases, at least once, and local law enforcement is just watching with their hands in their pockets. Shouldn't the sheriffs be doing something in this process?
Yes, and in fact, every sheriff in this country who had someone from January 6th arrested in their community should have stopped the FBI and said, this man wants extradition. And you must go through that lawful extradition process. If you go from one jurisdiction to another to arrest somebody, you have to go through the extradition process. That is a check and balance guaranteed in the Constitution for the accused, to make sure that people in other jurisdictions don't just fabricate charges, fabricate evidence, whatever was done, and then they go through the process and saying, hey, I'm objecting to this arrest. I'm objecting to this because there is no evidence against me. They have fabricated this. Whatever the person wants to, the reason that the accused wants to use to say why they don't want to leave their home county, that's what extradition is about. And it goes through the governor's office, and the governor has to actually sign off on it. Not one time in all these thousands of arrests did the FBI respect that. And the sheriff should have already been made aware of that and guaranteed the right of the people to this is in the Constitution. It's guaranteed. And everybody else does it, but the FBI doesn't. Why? So, again, we don't trust the FBI because they have earned every bit of that. And so let me tell you about January 6th. I was invited over a dozen times to go to January 6th. I smelled a rat, and I told people not to go. And nobody from our organization went. You know why? Because I told everybody not to go. And I said, this is us playing into their hands. And if anybody, and by the way, 2 people were murdered on that day by the federal government, by the Capitol Police. One, and both of them were ladies. And you would think that they would really be going after those people. But the officer who shot Ashley Babbitt, he actually said, I so feared for my life that I had to shoot this small unarmed woman. And the Democrats let that go. That's fine. This corrupt Washington, D.C. government just let it go because this man said he feared for his life. Why did he shoot everybody else? No, just this young lady, a former Marine. Yeah. So, folks, this from the get-go, this all stunk. We also know for a fact that there were agent provocateurs in there. So were they the ones actually breaking in the windows? What happened? If anybody did break windows and went in there by force, they deserve to be charged.
Yes.
If somebody was invited into the Capitol, they cannot be charged. They do not deserve to be charged. And if somebody was just sitting outside on the U.S. Capitol lawn, none of them should have ever been arrested, but one was. And the judge said, I know you didn't do anything wrong, but you were a drop in the flood. And the judge actually gave him a couple of weeks in jail just because he wanted to. All of this was extremely tyrannical, unconstitutional, dictatorial, and a huge miscarriage of justice.
Yeah, and I do have to make one small correction on you. Ashley Babbitt was an Air Force security police officer.
Air Force. Okay.
I think her husband might have been a Marine, but
maybe
but
so.
She was.
I've talked to her mother several times.
I still believe that she was trying to get law enforcement to do something because she was kind of pushing off and hitting this Antifa, suspected Antifa guy that was the guy that actually broke the window. And the law enforcement people around her weren't doing anything. So that's why I think she went through the window, actually. And she was murdered outright. And that guy needs to be prosecuted.
Oh, absolutely. He got promoted.
I know.
But Vicky, I can't remember her last name, but she was from Minnesota, and she was there, and a man was breaking in the window, and she said, Donald Trump supporters don't act like this. They don't do this. And she got arrested. She told him to stop doing it, and she was arrested. Yeah.
So these violations of due process and the sheriffs being the constitutional officers in these jurisdictions where these people are essentially being kidnapped, right? I mean, this extradition process between the states is not unusual, right? I mean, it happens every day.
Happens all the time.
Right?
I had to extradite people before. I had to, if I go into another jurisdiction, I have to respect that law. The FBI, of course, they don't have to. No, this is all such absurdity and injustice. And again, it goes back to the utter corruption of Washington, D.C. And what I have said, and I'll say again, the greatest threat to our God-given American liberty is our own federal government.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there, and I say that with a heavy heart.
Me too.
It's just it's a disaster what's been happening. We've got to get Mr. Trump back in office, and he's got to appoint people that will follow through. And I agree with you about the agencies. Even my own institution, the Department of Defense, needs to be cleaned out very, very thoroughly because it's full of partisans and ideologues that are pushing Marxist ideology and indoctrinating our young officers and enlisted folks with it. So it's going to be a really heavy lift, but it's got to be done. It's got to be done.
Abolish like the Department of Labor, Department of Education, like Trump was already committed to. But you can keep Department of Transportation. I think the states can handle their own transportation, but the federal government has absolutely no skin in the game because of the 10th Amendment. And the states have got to rise up and enforce the 10th Amendment. The powers not delegated to the United States government by the Constitution are reserved to the states or to the people.
That's right.
And the people and the states have got to take this back. And we at the CSPOA have that plan, have that course of action. And folks, it won't happen without you, and it won't happen without your sheriff. And this will not remain peaceful if we don't get the sheriffs and we the people moving on this now. This is a peaceful and effective solution. And folks, let's focus on the solution. And Trump is going to need us if he gets in there. And the American people are going to need us drastically as well. If we're going to restore America, it's going to be county by county, state by state. And the sheriffs are there as the top executor of the law in every county. And we need them, and we need the people to get on them and lobby them and be a part of this right now. Folks, every one of you can go to cspoa.org and become a member of our posse so that we can train you to be a part of yours. cspoa.org. Join us in this holy cause of liberty.
And what are the details of that conference you mentioned in September about election integrity, Sheriff Mack? Let's put those out too.
Well, it's September 7th in Florida, in Orlando. And you can go to our website and see about that. We're actually working with the Florida Freedom Foundation on this. Also, it looks like APOA will be joining us, American Police Officer Alliance. And this is simply this: to create constitutional county sanctuaries, constitutional sanctuaries across the nation, which Florida has already been doing pretty well. And then making sure that constitutional sheriffs are enforcing the edicts and ordinances from these constitutional counties. And first on the list is to make sure that election fraud is investigated and that election engineering is prevented, and that we can stop the steal and stop the destruction and the theft of our most important stewardship as the people of this country, that we decide who our elected officials are and not some foreign entity or somebody manipulating our computers. We must have that guarantee that that is not happening, and that is exactly what this conference is about.
Well, sir, we're out of time, unfortunately. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been great to get to know you. I know I'll be asking to have you back in the future if you're willing to come, because this is critically important information that people need to be aware of. And folks, don't believe the crazies out there that will come out, that do come out and say this organization is one thing or another. Go look at their website. Look at what they've done. Sheriff Mack's all over the place as far as video goes, talking about this. It's all constitutional. It's the right way to do business instead of the wrong way, which a lot of people are continuing to do, and that's getting us in trouble, right?
Yeah. This is a peaceful and effective solution, folks, and we need your help. Please help us raise the money for this conference and join us and be a part of this most absolutely constitutional solution.
Well, thank you, sir. Have a great day. Sheriff Richard Mack of the CSPOA. Go to cspoa.org and find out all about these conferences and how to help them. And they do need help. Just like I know it's an election you're giving to politicians. But, we got to get this job done, or we won't have a job left to do if we don't make some corrections through our peaceful means. We have this opportunity to do that. All right, Monday is More War Monday. Unfortunately, there is so much material out here about the war on the American people by the federal government. We're going to have another More War Monday dedicated to that. My guest will be Marine Captain Chris Cooney, who was scheduled to be on the show a few weeks ago, but had to go have critical surgery. Well, he's back. He's ready to go, and we're going to talk about his story. Have your hankies out there, because I get emotional every time I hear Chris's story and talk to him or his wife, because they're devastated, and they're true American patriots just trying to fight for what is right and getting crushed by the United States government. I'll see you Monday. on Worldview Tube and X Spaces Simulcast.